Hello everyone, my name is Théato and welcome to the Psychic Matters podcast, episode number 88. Thank you to all of you who have subscribed to my new YouTube channel for the podcast. I was hoping to have my first video launched by now. It was called Hagstones, a portal to the multiverse. But unfortunately, my life has taken a temporary but very sudden swerve in a completely different direction, so everything is on hold at the moment. I think it was John Lennon who said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." Well, life is very much happening to me at the moment, and my best laid plans and the direction I was heading in have all temporarily stalled. But that's all okay, and it makes life another big adventure, giving me more adventures than I bargained on having, I must say. And amongst the chaos of my current existence, I had to postpone some podcast interviews, and that means I actually don't have a podcast prepared for this week. And as I'm not at home in the Psychic Matters studio, I can't record one using my fancy equipment, and I don't have access to all my files and records and interviews and guests either. So I find myself in the Republic of Ireland this week. It's so beautiful over here. I've had to drop everything and fly over here in a bit of an emergency. And now I am stuck. So I've never missed creating, recording and producing a podcast episode in 3 years. And so, in the spirit of guerrilla podcasting, where I will make a podcast come what may, I am recording this using just my iPhone headphones and clutching at the germ of an idea. And if this very sorry and sad state of affairs tugs at your heartstrings, please do consider making a donation to the podcast to help support my work. And you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/psychicmatters. Whilst I was in the throes of despair creating this episode, I put out a call on the Psychic Matters Facebook group page asking for someone to buy me a coffee, and you guys instantly responded, and I honestly wanted to cry. Thank you so much to you for your generosity and your kind comments in keeping me going at the moment. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Let's proceed with this week's podcast. And in this episode, I explore the spiritual and medicinal qualities of the elder tree. Now, the elder tree has been revered for centuries for its healing properties and its association with the divine. And in this episode, I will tell you all about the many ways in which the elder tree can be used as a medicinal herb, and I explore its spiritual significance. And if you have, round about where you live, wherever you may be in the world, if you have a common elder tree growing close by, it may be that you never need to go to the doctor again, because medicinally, every part of the tree, well, actually it's considered to be a type of small bush, but every part is used: the berries, the flowers, leaves, bark, pith and roots, and they're all used to cure a variety of ailments such as epilepsy, asthma, inflammation of the eyes, fever, colds, flu, sore throats, bruises, and all of these different things. And as such, the elder tree is known as the medicine chest of the country people. An elderflower decoction makes a really good anti-inflammatory mouthwash or gargle for swollen, painful gums and sore throats. And the flowers were used in skin washes to improve the complexion and to soften the skin and to relieve things like sunburn or eczema, acne or psoriasis, these kind of skin complaints. Elderflowers you can beat into the batter of cakes or muffins, which gives them a very delicate texture. The dried berries and flowers can be used to make wine and teas and vinegars with many, many healthful benefits. And elderberry tea is known to be a cure for colic and stomach upsets. Elderberry juice can often banish the pain of sciatica. The bark of older branches of the elder and its roots can be used to create a black dye, and the leaves of the elder tree give off a green dye, and the berries will give you a blue and purple dye, and the Romans, they used to make use of elderberry juice as a hair dye. And even Cool-Pepper tells us that the hair of the head washed with the berries boiled in wine is made black. So if you run out of hair dye, you can use some elderberry juice. The elder tree itself can grow quite tall, up to 30 feet tall, but typically your elder tree will reach a height of between 10 and 20 feet. And quite often it's shorter than that. It just turns into a bush, really. It has dark green leaves, and the leaves are divided into 5 or 9 little leaflets. And the elder tree will produce creamy white flowers in the summer with a very delicate fragrance. And in the fall or the autumn, it produces small, dark purple berries. And those berries are really commonly used in jams and jellies and pies. And you may well yourself have drunk elderflower cordial. It's lovely, sweet, floral syrup, often mixed with a sparkly water, something like this, or champagne sometimes, very nice. And it's such a lovely, light, refreshing drink in the summer months. The wood of the elder tree is really easily cut, and it polishes incredibly well. And so it used to be used a lot for making butchers' skewers and shoemakers' pegs, things like this. All sorts of articles that would be turned, things like fishing rods or mathematical instruments or needles for weaving fishing nets or combs, things like this. The younger wood is exceedingly light and has been used by watchmakers and people who make very, very delicate instruments. The elder is a deciduous tree, and it's native to Europe and Africa and parts of Asia. And it is known to have antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and immune-boosting properties. And one of my personal great discoveries of the elder is that it has insect-repelling properties. And years ago, when I had an allotment in London, there was a water tank on my plot. And in the late spring and summer, I used to be eaten alive by the mosquitoes that lived in that water tank. But I discovered that there was an elder tree growing just across the way, so I used to ask it permission to take a few leaves, and then I rubbed them every afternoon on my arms and legs, all of my exposed flesh, and it absolutely stopped those mosquitoes from biting me. I mean, admittedly, I did look a bit green and streaky, like one of those little boys from Peter Brook's film Lord of the Flies, but hey, it works. It worked really well. And I understand that most insects find that unpleasant odour of the leaves quite offensive. So if you bruise the leaves and wear a sprig in your hat or rub them on your face, flies will leave you alone. And I didn't find I smelled bad. I mean, I guess I don't know. We all like the smell of ourselves, don't we? Perhaps I was a bit pungent for other people, who knows? But anyway, it worked. The whole tree has a narcotic smell, and no plant will grow in its shadow. Isn't that interesting? And elders are common in woods and waste places because the seeds germinate very, very easily, and seedlings spread quickly because they're not eaten by rabbits or any other small animals. So it's quite a prolific plant. As you know, you can probably hear things in the background of this podcast. I can't help it. I'm not in a studio, and I'm in Ireland, so rural Ireland, lots of tractors and farmers coming into the garage just opposite my mother's house here and coming in for their dinner. So it might get a bit noisy in a minute, but let's proceed. So the elder tree, on the basis that it's an insecticide or an insect repellent, really, you can make up a decoction of the leaves in some water and spray your plants to keep off attacks of aphids. And badgers will also rub their bodies really vigorously against the roots of the tree to kill the lice in their fur. And I wonder if a decoction of leaves would kill head lice. Wouldn't that be interesting to try? Maybe not for your child. Disclaimer. This is not a recommendation. Nothing in this podcast is a recommendation. It's just ponderings. So I just find the elder tree absolutely fascinating. Sheep and cows will eat the leaves, but horses and goats, on the whole, won't eat them at all. And Carl Linnaeus, who was one of our forefathers in modern ecology, he discovered that sheep, if they're suffering from foot rot, can cure themselves by eating the bark and also the young shoots of the elder. And he also discovered elderflowers were fatal to turkeys and peacocks, and that the berries have a very ill effect on chickens. So it's interesting, isn't it? The different types of animals, species that love it and those that don't go for it at all. But fast forward to 1990, when scientists, this is where the science comes in, when scientists in Bulgaria found that elderflowers had antiviral action against a virus called herpes simplex type 1, which is the virus responsible for causing cold sores. And Israel is way up there in scientific exploration, and their clinical evidence shows elderberry extract is very effective in inhibiting various strains of the flu virus. And interestingly, in the UK here, where I say I'm in the UK, I'm in Ireland at the moment, but where I usually am in the UK, the elder keeps its place in the British pharmacopoeia. And for centuries in the UK, we have used something called elderberry rob, R-O-B. And I used to make elderberry rob every single year. And basically what you do is you take a pound of elderberries and you crush them in a saucepan. I used to just bash them up a bit with a potato masher. And then you add a pound of brown sugar and then simmer it on a low heat until it becomes a syrup. I mean, it couldn't be easier. A pound of elderberries, a pound of brown sugar, simmer it on a low heat and wait for it to cool. Then just put it through a sieve and then stick it in an empty jam jar. And every time me or one of my children got a head cold or a sore throat in the winter, I would take a teaspoon or two of the elderberry rob, put it in some hot water, and they would drink it down or I would drink it down. Sometimes I'd add like ribena or blackcurrant juice to give it a bit of a better flavour for the children. Or, you know, if it was for me, I'd add a dash of my homemade raspberry brandy, give it a bit of wings. But it's like one of your grandmother's old-fashioned recipes, and it really, really works to soothe the symptoms of a cold and to lessen its hold on the body, and you'll cut your head cold down by a few days. And it's interesting, isn't it? All these old, grandmother's recipes and, old-fashioned home remedies, they're now being proven by science to have a basis. It really does work. It's very, very interesting. And also, I found it great fun taking the berries off an elder bush because it is actually a bush rather than a tree, but I'd take them off with a fork, and it was just fascinating watching all those tiny little berries popping and jumping in a bowl as you brush the fork down through them. And then I used to amuse myself with a fork and hold it close up in front of my right eye, and I'd peep through the prongs at a photograph of my ex-partner and imagine what he looked like in prison. You've got to entertain yourself, haven't you, folks, when you've been hard done by. And now we've got somebody cutting the grass outside. But you know what, folks? I have to continue with this podcast. I can re-record it and re-release it when I get back to England. But I'm really up against the clock at the moment. So please deal with the lawnmower in the background. It's terrible. I think it's just that it's been raining in Ireland for so long, and now everybody's out because the sun is shining. They're like, yay, spring's arrived. So they're all doing their spring chores. Anyway, back to the elder tree. Just laughing to myself. I paused for a moment to wait for the lawnmower to go away, and it has now gone away. And now my mother has put the wireless on really loud in the kitchen downstairs. Bear with me, guys. Welcome to the madness. So we were talking about the elder tree. Now, where was I? We talked about elderberry rob and the old-fashioned cures and things like that. And, I was just telling you about peeping at my partner through the prongs of a fork. So elderberry rob, then, has been a well-established cure for the common cold for centuries. And now, of course, in the modern-day era that we find ourselves in, science has now proven elderberries do produce something called vibernic acid, which induces perspiration and reduces inflammation in the body, and it boosts the immune system, and it's really, really useful for soothing bronchitis, purifying the blood and cleansing all our cells. And during the war, back in the olden days, elderflower ointment had widespread use for the healing of wounded horses. And the Blue Cross, which is an organisation that promotes the welfare of animals, they used to make special appeals for supplies of elderflower ointment, or elderflowers, so that they could make the ointment for the animals. And farmers would use the leaves of the elder tree in their granaries to keep the mice at bay, and they would boil up leaves with linseed oil and apply them to bruises and chilblains, dare I say it, hemorrhoids. Never thought I'd be using that word on my podcast. Don't try this at home, folks. I'm just telling you what they said when you could try it if you're desperate. Oh, let's move on. I just love elder trees. That's what I was saying. So let me tell you about the history. The word elder comes from the Anglo-Saxon word aeld, A-E-L-D, which means fire. And the soft pith inside the branches, if you push that out, it pushes out very easily. And you can make the tubes into bellows. And that's what they used to do in the olden days. And then they would make, ancient Greeks used to make little flutes and musical pipes out of the little branches of the elder tree. So it was often referred to as a pipe tree or a bower tree. Its Latin name is Sambucus niger, and Sambuca, of course, is Greek for musical instrument. Historically, the elder tree is surrounded by myth and superstition and folklore, and there is a medieval belief that you could do certain things to ward off evil spirits. And although the elder tree is not mentioned directly by Shakespeare in his play Love's Labour's Lost, there is reference in that play to something called Flapdragon, F-L-A-P, Flapdragon. And that's a game they used to play now. Again, don't do this at home, folks. But back in Shakespeare's day, they used to set raisins alight and catch them in their mouths. Now, like I say, do not do this at home, folks, for obvious reasons. But back then, this game they called Flapdragon. And if you played it successfully, it was believed that you could ward off evil spirits, much like the thought that the elder tree could also protect you from evil spirits or witches as well. And in England, it was believed that carrying an elder twig tied in 3/4 of a knot in one's pocket could help to prevent or at least alleviate rheumatism. And now, my mother's clock is bonging in the hallway. It bongs every 15 minutes. Welcome to my life, listeners. Welcome to my life. Let's just wait for that to finish. It's finished. Very good. It's also not donging on the right hours. I don't know what the time is. It's mad. Living in a madhouse. Where was I? Oh, yeah. The other thing is, people believed that these myths and legends, that people truly believed them back in the day, and they believed if you chastised a child with an elder switch, that child would stop growing. Incredible. Obviously, don't do that either. Should never hit children. And it's been said in myth and legend that the disciple of Jesus, who was called Judas Iscariot, hung himself on the elder tree, and the tree therefore became an emblem of sorrow and death. And it's hard to believe, really, that a man could be hung on such a small bush. And there's no scientific or historical evidence to say that it's true. It's all myth and legend. It's all gossip and hearsay. But it's interesting to know that an edible fungus called Jew's ear grows almost exclusively on the elder, and that this fungus has become a famous medicine for curing throat infections. According to popular belief, the Dutch physician Boerhaave never passed an elder without raising his hat in deference to its medicinal qualities. Years ago in England, the elder tree was grown on purpose close to English cottages for protection against witches and illness, and the country folk in the olden days were always petrified to prune it. It had such a superstition around it that they thought if they pruned it, they'd be pursued by bad luck. So they would always ask permission from the tree. And I think it's a good idea. I would always ask a tree or a bush for permission to prune it. I think it's respectful, gives them some advance notice. You could say, this is what my reasons are for asking if I can have some leaves or whatever, and this is what's happening. And I used to do that with ants on my allotment. I would ask them to leave, or once upon a time there were wasps in a wasp's nest by the entrance door of my shed, and I asked the wasps to leave, and they told me they didn't want to. So I asked that we happily live alongside each other. If they agreed not to sting me, I would agree to them staying. And so they stayed for a whole season, and I'd go in and out of the shed door, as would they, because they'd fly in through the shed door and go down under the floorboards. That's where their nest was. And we lived happily side by side. I didn't stand in their navigational path where they were trying to get into the nest. And we just lived alongside each other. It was actually a really, really pleasant experience. Loved living next to the wasps. I was very glad that I didn't kill them or get rid of them. And here in Ireland as well, there's this wonderful tradition of telling the bees. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's an ancient practice where beekeepers would let their bees know about any significant life events. So things like births or marriages or deaths in the family, or even if you're going to be away for a long time, it was always very, very important to let the bees know. And it was, or still is, believed that if the bees are not informed, they may leave the hive and stop producing honey, because there's a huge belief, not only in Ireland, but in cultures and traditions around the world, that bees are not merely insects, but they are sacred insects with an important role in the world, and they are seen as a link between the human and spiritual worlds. And so beekeepers will go to the hive, they will softly whisper the news to the bees while gently tapping the hive, and the bees are then invited to share in the family's joy or the family's sorrow. And sometimes a family might even drape a piece of black fabric over the hive if there's been a death in the family, for instance. So that would be a sign of mourning. And also if the beekeeper themselves dies and a new beekeeper comes along, then that new beekeeper has to go to the hive and introduce themselves formally as their new owner and ask for acceptance of their ask for the bees' acceptance of them as their new master and mistress. So telling the bees is also thought to bring good luck and prosperity as well, not only to the hive of the bees, but also to the beekeeper and her or his family. So if there was a wedding in the family, for instance, the hive would be decorated and a small piece of wedding cake would be left just outside the hive so that the bees could also partake in the celebrations. Absolutely beautiful. So that lovely intimate relationship between bees and their keepers have led to lots and lots of different folklore. They say it's bad luck, for instance, to buy or sell hives, because if you sell one, then you sell your luck with your bees. And instead of, if you needed to pass your bees on and you wanted some money, then you would barter for them, or you'd give them as gifts and get something in return. So ever so interesting, all the sort of myth and legend that goes alongside it. If a bee flies into the house, for instance, means a stranger would soon call. If they rested on a roof, then good luck was on its way. So bees and humans have a relationship extends far beyond superstition. And in reality, of course, we know bees play a crucial role in human survival. Approximately 70 of the top 100 crop species, which provide nourishment for 90% of the world's population, depends on bees for pollination. So if bees were to disappear, these plants would die out, and that would lead to a catastrophic ripple effect of the food chain that could endanger countless animal species. The loss of a beehive is much more severe than the loss of a source of honey, because the consequences can be life-threatening. So the tradition of telling the bees serves to emphasize deep bond that humans share with these remarkable insects. It's fascinating, isn't it? I love it. It's so interesting. Anyway, back to the elder tree and the customs regarding its twigs and sticks. There is an old custom among travelling people back in the 1700s, 1800s, which forbade them to use elderwood to kindle their campfires. And any gleaners of firewood, so gleaners are people that would go up and pick up little sticks for the fire, they would look really, really carefully through the faggots in case a stick of elder had found its way into the bundle that they were about to put on the fire. Green elder branches were buried in a grave to protect the dead from witches and evil spirits, and in some parts of England it was custom for the driver of the hearse to carry a whip made of elder wood. An elder hedge, if you plant an elder hedge, you can make it really close and compact in growth if you clip it a couple of times a year, 2 or 3 times a year. And they say that an elder stake in the ground will last longer than an iron bar of the same size because it grows so strongly in the ground, and its ability to regenerate quickly after being cut is seen also as a symbol of new life and new growth. Russians believe elder trees drive away evil spirits, and in Russian folklore, elder trees are believed to have protective properties also. The belief in the protective power of elder trees is rooted in the ancient Slavic mythology, where it was associated with a goddess of love and fertility. In Sicilian folklore, elder wood is believed to have protective properties, and according to the legend, carrying a stick of elder wood would protect you from snake bites and could also be used to fend off a robber. Elder wood crafts such as walking sticks and canes, they're still very popular in Sicily, and the elder tree is still used in traditional medicines and herbal remedies. In Denmark, the elder was connected with magic. In Danish folklore, it was believed that the elder tree was inhabited by a spirit or dryad known as, now I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, so if you're Danish, forgive me. I think it's pronounced Hildemoer, Hyldemoer. And the Hildemoer was the protector of the tree and the surrounding area. It was believed that if the elder tree was cut down without proper respect or without asking permission from the Hildemoer, she would haunt the person who cut it down. And to avoid angering the Hildemoer, it was customary to ask her for permission before cutting it, and to leave offerings for her, such as food and drink, as a sign of respect. And it was also believed the Hildemoer had healing powers, and that the elder tree had medicinal properties. And it's for that reason that the elder tree is highly respected in Danish culture, and it's, again, often used in traditional medicine. In Serbian folklore, elderwood is also believed to have protective and lucky properties, and it's commonly used in various rituals and celebrations, including weddings. And according to tradition, it's also considered good luck to have a stick of elderwood present during a wedding ceremony. And that stick of elderwood is usually decorated with ribbons or flowers, and it's often carried by the bride or groom as they enter the church or the wedding venue. And again, it's believed that the elderwood stick will protect the couple from evil spirits and bring them good luck and prosperity in their marriage. So the elder tree has a rich spiritual history, and it's considered a sacred tree in many, many cultures around the world. And there are many ways that we can spiritually honour the elder tree if you do have one growing close by. You could leave offerings of water or milk or honey or gifts. The base of an elder tree is a way of showing gratitude and respect. You could do that with any tree, actually, on your property, any tree out in the wild. You might like to meditate quietly in front of that elder tree, or again, any tree. Meditate on its wisdom and its energy. Maybe you would like to focus on the tree's branches or the tree's leaves or flowers, depends on the season, I suppose, and visualize its energy flowing into you and bringing healing and peace. You could create your own ritual to honor the tree. You could light a candle or burn some incense, recite a prayer or a mantra, something like this, to connect with the tree's energy. Or maybe you just want to use its products, like you can use the elderflower for cordials or the elderberry syrup, the elderberry rob. Bring that into your diet. Yeah, definitely make yourself some elderberry rob when the season allows, asking permission, of course, always from the elder tree first. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I've really enjoyed telling you about one of my favourite trees, the elder. It truly is a medicine chest of the country people. To get the show notes for this episode, please visit my website, anntheato.com, ANNTHEATO.com, and click on the podcast tab. Meanwhile, I wish you all a wonderful couple of weeks, and don't forget to support and subscribe to my new YouTube channel at Psychic Matters. And as soon as I can get back to my real life, some fabulous videos will be coming your way very soon. My name is Anne Théato, and thank you for listening to Psychic Matters.